Welcome to the Software Lifecycle Stories podcast. We bring you stories of what worked and sometimes what did not in the course of discovering, designing, developing, delivering, and using software based solutions, as shared by practitioners who went through these situations.
In this episode of the Software Lifecycle Stories podcast, Veena Samartha, the Executive Director and CEO of the Bangalore-based IoT venture VeCrear Technologies, shares her experiences and views on what she learned while working on fault-tolerant systems and embedded technologies, how it helped her in her journey towards becoming an entrepreneur, how she developed capabilities to run a company, facing dilemmas of market forces versus delivery capabilities, and tips to motivate employees. She also shares some future thoughts of how to pass the baton on to the next generation. Listen on. So, hi, Veena. Good morning. And thank you so much for being a podcast guest on our show. A warm welcome to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chitra. It is always a pleasure interacting with you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So, we usually start by asking our podcast guests to introduce themselves. So, please go ahead and tell us a little about yourself.
So, you always start with a tough question.
Oh, we thought that was an easy one.
All right. So, yes, my name is Veena Samartha. And I think more from the context of this podcast where we are talking professional experiences. I have been, I was educated in electronics engineering, and luckily I initiated the beginning of my career in the same field, in terms of being closer to the hardware and electronics as an embedded engineer. So my engineering days have all been associated with embedded systems, real-time systems, fault-tolerant systems. So that was my technical background. Moved on to leading teams and managing technical teams, both in services as well as product organizations. Yes, a good close to 18 years of my career have been in that space of operating systems, some telecom fault management systems, and storage servers. So that's the space I have worked on. Then started my entrepreneurial journey, and in the last 6 years I have been working with my teams. The endeavor is to enable technology development from India for the global market, and the domain that we have been focusing on is the convergence of wireless technologies and web and mobile and cloud technologies to implement solutions that impact day-to-day life and ease the operations for various kinds of enterprises. So the nomenclature these days for this field is Internet of Things. So that's what I'm engaged in the last 6 years.
That's very well put. A combination of so many technologies and one simple little phrase called the Internet of Things. It sounds so simple, doesn't it?
It's true. That's true. It's a macrocosm it's a culmination of so many microcosm in a macrocosm. So you're right.
Okay. So what was your journey like? Moving through as a hardware engineer, then into embedded systems, fault-tolerant systems. What were some of the stories that you can share from those experiences with our listeners?
It's been a very interesting journey. I think it kind of suited my temperament of being inquisitive and more, wanting to learn more from experimenting and doing things rather than going down the path of acquiring knowledge, more through reading and assimilating information. So I think that has been very interesting for me, whether it was working with very small chipsets and coding in the machine language of those chipsets, and to more advanced languages like C and C++. So I think being able to visualize or understand the logic behind what is happening when we are doing things, I think that has been a very interesting journey for me. And also the fact that, the problems are always very different, always new in the space where you are operating at clock cycles and, trying to figure out what is happening in that space. And I think it also gave me a very strong systemic background, to look at a system as a whole rather than looking at a particular feature or a particular instantiation of what you're looking at from a product. So I owe a lot definitely to my background in that space.
Given the fact that you said that you had a systemic background, which enabled you to get a larger perspective on what you were working on, how did some of that experience build or impact what customers would experience while consuming these products?
Oh, that's a very interesting and very exciting space, actually, Chitra. Since it was all, like I mentioned, real-time systems, a lot of these were deployed in mission-critical environments. So we were running the backends of large banks or stock exchanges or, transport services. So a variety of these as enterprise customers. And so even a small fault in the entire system led to huge impacts, financially or consumer impact wise. And so it was, quite, I would say, most of the time it used to be very interesting detective stories rather than being troubleshooting and fixing endeavors. So when you had problems in these kind of systems, so you were ticking against the clock, you were ticking against the millions of dollars that were getting impacted. So those were the pressures against which you were always operating when something went wrong with these systems. Similarly, when you were building or designing these systems, there was always this caution of being aware of what can go wrong. So I think that perspective helped a lot in building very robust systems. It was not just about how do you ensure things run the way they should, but coming up with all kinds of scenarios of what can go wrong. Even the impossible scenarios of what might go wrong used to be the focus when you're trying to build mission critical systems. Yes, so you also were very close to the fact on how it impacted customers, and hence I think it molded a whole lot of skills, not just in terms of technically handling the issues, but also how do you approach the whole premise of building or fixing something in that space. Also touched upon a lot of soft skills in terms of prioritizing or what hunch you're going to follow and where you drop a line of thread and pursue another which is more effective. How do you communicate the status, because there are all these stakeholders, all these people who are impacted, who are watching and waiting to get something done. So I think it was a very wholesome experience as a professional to be dealing with these kind of systems.
Nice, very nice. It's interesting that you said, how do you follow your hunch? And I'm sure that will make a very interesting conversation for a future podcast at some point in time. So that's something that I'm going to keep in my mind when we have our next conversation. So how did all these experiences help you transition into becoming an entrepreneur? And what was it that drove you towards entrepreneurship?
Okay, let me pick those as two independent questions.
Yes, thank you.
How my background helped? Definitely, like I said, there is this confidence about being able to understand systems solutions at a conceptual level, and be able to slice and dice a problem solving scenario into its various components or aspects, and hence try to put a solution together. Like you rightly identified, IoT is a vast ocean of technologies that go into building a solution, right? So a familiarity or specialization in one aspect doesn't really enable one to envisage the entirety of the solution, because there is hardware involved which you will need to custom build based on what sensors or actuators you're picking, and how the entire connectivity into some kind of a central compute is going to operate. And then there is the whole technology of implementing the various features and functionality in some centralized compute, which again, in the changing world today, while it used to be more of a backend or a cloud-based system in the past, there is a lot of that compute power that is getting pushed into the gateways, or the edge compute these days. So it's a vast spectrum, and I think my background as an embedded or fault tolerant and mission critical engineering helped me to look at it in its entirety, and break it down into the components that need to go. And then you're looking into the specialization and options and alternatives into each of those components, right? So definitely my background has helped, because I don't know if coming from a totally application space would have enabled me to understand the nuances of what go into the solutioning. Right? So when you go higher up the stack in terms of solution building, you are so much more obfuscated from the details of what happens in the lower layers. And I think my background in electronics as well as embedded engineering helps me to understand the stack in its entirety. And so it doesn't become so daunting to adopt to a new technology or to understand a new space that you're operating in. Of course, we are in the information era, so I owe a lot to the wealth of knowledge that is accessible today. And I really appreciate your endeavor in terms of these podcasts, which are another set of enablers, where you're trying to impart the experiences in one space to anybody who's seeking it. So kudos to you and the team on this endeavor.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So coming to the other question of entrepreneurship, I really don't have an answer to it, Chitra. Very frankly, I just got consumed into that space, because I don't know if I myself had any aspirations. I just knew that I was kind of, a little disinterested in the normal way of corporate life. But I really didn't know if it was an entrepreneurial journey that I was looking at. I just happened to get an opportunity to start associating myself with a startup. Felt that I really enjoyed the journey, and then just things happened. So,
That's nice. That's nice. Thank you for sharing. So, what has your entrepreneurship journey been like? Moving from a fairly definitive and bound problem statements, or even, uh, arriving at solutions, which sort of comes normally thanks to our engineering training. How was it moving into the space of entrepreneurship, where you were actually responsible to build and grow an organization as well as nurture its people?
it's been a fantastic experience, and I think so much learning, and I definitely feel there is so much more to learn on this journey. Yes, the major factor was, beyond the space of technical competency and technology awareness as was required of my jobs in the past, right? So there are a lot of aspects that I have picked up, as you rightly mentioned, in terms of building an organization, or even going ahead and meeting up clients, making business happen. So there's a that is a space in itself, which has been totally new learning for somebody who has not had that kind of background either in sales or marketing or the finance aspects of running a business. So, but coming back to the technology space itself, as you rightly mentioned, while you're looking at certain areas or domains or certain product lines as part of your corporate responsibilities, here you're thrown into a whole new world of opportunities, right? And I think one of the major learnings is in terms of being able to discern what exactly is it that we want to do as an organization, what is it that we want to focus on, what is it that we want to build on, and what is it that we want to bring out as a specialization that we are good at. That in itself was a journey. With the changing paradigms in the technology world, it made it so much more interesting. Are you driven by market opportunities, or are you driven by your technology competency, or are you driven more from a larger cause of what is it that you want to make a differentiation with, right? So these were all the interesting crossroads that we continue to address as we go by every day as an entrepreneur, and especially engaged in a domain that is so vast.
A question just came to my mind. Like you said, the IoT space is so vast, and it's a culmination of so many technologies that one has the freedom to stitch together to address so many different kinds of problems. So,
Right.
have you ever been faced with dilemmas? You referred a lot to them, whether are you going with a niche offering? How do you even know is this a niche offering? Or are you being dictated to by market forces and you're simply following those? How do you decide where to play your cards or where to position your offering? And what have you learned from doing something like that?
Yeah, I think that as the as somebody sitting at the helm of an organization and trying to shape the direction, I think that is the biggest challenge. Because as I rightly said, market opportunities tend to gyrate you into the direction where you can find your leads or find the opportunities. While on the other hand, from a delivery perspective, you are bound by the capabilities that you can bring in, the affordability of what kind of skill sets you can bring in into the organization, and somewhere in between these two is this concept called vision, right? So I think for an entrepreneur, it is very, very important to have a clear vision on where you're heading and keep checking the direction, in terms of whether it is aligned with the vision that you're trying to deliver, right? So I think for us, the North Star, leading us was this vision and a very strong passion to do technology from India for the global market. So that has been the guiding star. And whenever there is a tendency to meander or get tempted into the line of cash flows and top line, and these become the mandate, and there is a temptation to move into more mundane activities, I think this is what pulls me back and say, hey, is this really adding value to the global footprint in terms of what we are trying to create or what we are trying to do here, right? Similarly, when there are new technologies, new things that need to be experimented with, there is always the fear of, do we really have the competency? And there again, we are driven by the vision to go back and say, yes, if there is something challenging, something that has not been attempted, let us put in that extra effort to make it happen. At least give it a try. And it's all right if we fail, because at least we have a story to tell on what went wrong, right? Rather than not attempting it. So far, so good.
Great, Veena. In fact, those stories I think would also make for another podcast episode, is the thought that's running in my mind. So
yes, I have a larger number of those stories than the success stories, so definitely a lot more content there.
I am sure that would, add value into some listeners' lives, to perhaps not
Absolutely.
take failures too hard, but look at them as experiments and so on. So definitely looking forward to talking to you sometime, perhaps creating a series of failure stories of some
No,
sort.
sure.
People are such an important aspect in any organization. As an entrepreneur, how have you nurtured people in your organization, and what is it that you can share with some of our listeners who perhaps are entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs?
Another interesting area, Chitra, because I think uh, most of us in the corporate line are tuned to a certain concept of identifying talent, putting them through a certain set of technology as well as soft skill learnings in order to adopt into the needs of the organization. And then for a larger part, live this concept called managing the resource or the talent pool, right? I think my entrepreneurial journey has again been a lot of learning in the aspect of being able to understand people as human beings, right? And their passions, their volitions, and how do you marry all these into the concept of an organization where collectively you have certain common goals that you're trying to achieve, right? So it also gave me an opportunity to interact and work a lot with millennial kids, because corporates typically prefer to have the more experienced resources, which means you're working with a set of professionals who are more or less your own age group or older, right? So this has been a whole lot of learning. And coming back to your question of how do you, I think few of the key learnings for me was one, to paint that picture of where we want to move ahead, right? As leaders, I think selling that dream of what we want to do uh, down to everybody in the organization so that they feel they belong, I think is one of the important aspects. And being able to influence minds to see the big picture of the organization, especially when you're a small entity with known big name or brand that can attract and hold people, nor are you, financially in a situation where you can afford that stickiness for people to stay around. I think the vision, the larger goal of trying to do something and being able to percolate that into the minds and hearts of people is an important aspect. Equally important is your ability to walk the talk and show those steps towards achieving the vision, right? There are a lot of obstacles, there are a lot of things that distract your mind, there are a lot of things that need your attention more from a strategic or tactical perspective, but always having that focus to take people along. I think that was the another aspect of my entrepreneurial journey. uh, the third aspect is, of course, being able to keep that warm feeling of being a part of a family. So, there are exceptions that need to be made, at the same time things that need to be enforced, so putting all this together in a very, very comfortable format for people to relate, feel comfortable in the environments in which they are working, and feel motivated to go beyond their call of responsibility. Because a lot of these are overlapping technologies, overlapping areas of expertise, and the ability for people to build their skills both in breadth as well as in depth is definitely a challenge that is equally exciting and frustrating, right? So hand-holding people through this entire experience, I think, is a very interesting journey once you adapt to it and kind of will yourself into it, take it as a natural flow. While when I look back at my corporate career, a lot of these things would have been very frustrating experiences while you're operating within the boundaries of your own responsibility, right? So yeah, I guess those were my key learnings in being able to put the organization together and hold people for longer durations and take them forward.
Very nice leadership lessons, Veena. Thanks so much. In fact, I love your statement that you said, will yourself into a natural flow and perhaps things will align themselves. Very nicely said. Thank you. As a CEO, how do you manage to keep yourself up to date with what's happening in the world out there with technology changing so rapidly, almost on a daily basis, as well as keeping yourself grounded and in the moment as you go through your day and run this organization?
Very frankly, Chitra, I'm a very, very ad hoc learner in that aspect. That I really do not have, portals that I subscribe to or groups into which I listen into. I think I go more, I'm a more people-oriented person in that aspect. I network, all my information, staying abreast, knowing the trends. Vast majority of this information comes to me more in terms of my networking with a whole lot of people. So I'm traveling quite extensively, and while I'm here in Bangalore also, I have a pretty large circle of friends and acquaintances that I have developed through my entrepreneurial journey, whom I do make sure to keep in touch, interact, have casual conversations. And there is also a whole lot of leaning on each other when there are scenarios that are a little beyond our reach individually, right? So that has been my mainstream to stay abreast with what is happening. I think I enjoy that interaction and learning that comes, which is not just confined to technology and business spaces, but the overall human aspect of how we evolve as better people through experiences of others, through their own journeys of what went wrong and what went right. I think that has been a very wholesome experience and held me good so far.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. So I've known you to be an avid reader, and you have a vast genre that you lean into, like you said. What are you reading right now?
I typically have 2 or 3 books of different genre going on based on, on the one hand, there is a book by Carlos Castaneda that I'm quite enjoying. And also, just simple fun reading in terms of some of the fiction novels. That's what is the current trend. But yes, I think there are flavors and seasons that induce me into a certain genre at any point in time, from very plain detective series to spirituality to I also enjoy a lot of I don't know what I should categorize them as. These are scientific works, but more endeavoring to understand life and the cosmos in its entirety, not compartmentalizing into the specializations that we are used to as the fields of science today, but crossing these boundaries and trying to have interspecialization plays and trying to interpret world in a different context. So these are things that hold my interest at present.
Nice. In fact, as while I was listening to your conversation, I always feel there's a book in the making also. So I certainly look forward to it at some point in time, Veena.
Oh my God! Oh, tall order, Chitra.
But I'm sure you'll get there at some point in time.
Maybe a joint venture sometime. Yes.
Oh yes, that's something that more than happy to help you with. So let's see how we can take that forward sometime. Yeah. As we come to the end of this recording, is there something that you would like to tell our listeners, either from your career journey or your life journey, or a combination of both?
I think, what kind of comes to my mind as we have been through this conversation, and it's been nice kind of looking back at what things have been. Very rarely we get to do this kind of, retrospection. So I'm glad we had this opportunity today. Starting at this juncture, I think we are at a very interesting crossroad. You take any aspect of our ecosystem on the socio-economic, ecosystem as it is, there are a lot of new things that are happening. It's paradigm shift that is happening. Political systems, there is a whole lot of upheaval happening. And so also in the world of technology and, the business outlook of the world at large. Similarly, more internally looking, our own concepts of purpose of life and what we stand to achieve as human beings is being questioned very differently. There is a lot of pondering on the aspects of what is it that we want to impart to our next generation, what are their trials and tribulations, and how is it that we are going to be able to give them any kind of guidance in this rapidly shifting and changing world that we are living in, right? So I think from all these aspects, we are at a very interesting juncture. And what plays paramount on my mind is the ability to stay positive under all circumstances, right? And always endeavor to have the kind of joy and serenity to approach everything which is nice, not nice, different, radically different, changing rapidly, all these circumstances which are quite unnerving. If we are able to take it in a very positive spirit and make it interesting, make it a learning exercise, embrace the changes as an opportunity to rediscover some things that we have never experienced in the past. I think that endeavor or that outlook will make us a very happy generation that is transitioning, and hand-holding and handing the baton to the next generation in a very positive spirit, rather than with a lot of fears and trepidations, right? So I think that is what is playing on my mind at this moment. So I'm thankful to be here at this point in time and look forward to everything that the future holds.
Great, Veena. What a wonderful way to, sum up this conversation. It certainly gives hope, I hope, to a lot of listeners and other people. I think I'm going to take this away and make sure that my kids listen to it along with several of my friends and other people in my network. So thank you so much. And it's been lovely having you on this show. Looking forward to more conversations with you.
It has been a great experience, Chitra. It's always a pleasure to be interacting with you. I was a little skeptical of how a more formal conversation would turn out. I must admit it's been wonderful. It's been really nice, with the triggers that you have put in to think, look back, look forward. My pleasure totally to have had this conversation too. Thank you so much.
If you like the show and would like to share your experiences with the community or know someone else who might want to do that, please get in touch with us at podcast@pm-powerconsulting.com. That is podcast@pm-powerconsulting.com.
Please rate the show on Podchaser, Stitcher, iTunes, or any other podcast client that you find us on. Please also share our episodes with your friends and others in your network. If you or anyone you know would like to be featured on our show, do write to us at this email address: podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.